While Western Australia and South Australia border each other, their planting seasons could not have started further apart. This chart shows cumulative rainfall from January to May in Western Australia and South Australia. Orange shows 2020, blue 2021, and the beige dash is the 10-year average. You can see that rainfall in the two WA regions improved in 2021, while in the two regions of South Australia, Port Lincoln and Clare, pre-planting rainfall fell far below the 10-year average, and even further below 2020 levels. What does that mean for planting? Well, while in WA we're seeing area rise by an entire 2%, in SA we're seeing a marginal decline. And now that we know what total planting is doing, how have conditions impacted what is being planted in terms of crops themselves? Well, in both states we're seeing more canola being planted due to great prices. But the shift into canola in Western Australia is far greater than in South Australia. We're also seeing less barley being planted due to the Chinese anti-dumping tariffs and comparatively lower prices for barley compared to canola. And lastly, in both cases, we are seeing less oats being planted, which should be supportive for prices. One interesting aspect of this graph is why we're not seeing a bigger uptake of canola this year in South Australia, especially given that farmers now have the opportunity to grow GM canola for the first time. To find out more on why more canola isn't being planted in South Australia, we switched to Tom Copley, our rural manager out of Berry. Tom, why are farmers not planting much canola this year despite such great prices?
That's a very good question, Dennis. What we're seeing in the region is a lot of people being concerned that it's a dry start and trying to de-risk their actual businesses. So they're looking for low-cost crops to put in that are tolerant to some extent towards a drier season, like canola, like your barley and your wheat. Canola does have some costs associated, and if you don't get that early start, a lot of growers have been burnt in the past with poor yields. Even though there's good prices, what we are seeing is people either winding back their amount of canola they're putting in, or just shelving it for next year and just keeping the seed.
And what about out of the canola that is being planted? Why aren't more farmers actually trying to plant GM canola?
It's an interesting question. A lot of growers have gone through the paperwork to go and start it, but there's also a lot of wanting to see what's happening over the next, like with the neighbour. Let the neighbour go first, find out, learn the mistakes, what the costs, the additional costs there could be. Is there any things that needs to be learnt on doing that? And really what we're seeing there is it's quite expensive to seed, and we're seeing a lot of farmers just going, well, we'll put it aside, wait for a better start to the season for next year, and they're just storing it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Even though with the prices where they are, people are looking to try and de-risk and not seeking the highest prices.
Thanks, Tom. One more interesting situation going on that we're going to cover is the hay market. This year, according to China's customs website, we saw 25 out of 28 hay export licenses to China expire and not renewed by the Chinese government, with all the remaining export licenses on the East Coast. As a result, planting has been reduced notably in South Australia this season, which should soften the impact on prices at harvest time. In Western Australia, however, we may see a different situation, and we have Nat Purdy, branch manager from our Narrogin office, to fill us in. Now, we've seen a sizable reduction in area planted for hay in South Australia this season. What about in your region in Western Australia? What has happened to hay planting there?
Thanks, Dennis. It's a really good question. I'll give you a bit of background first as to the area we cover, because this helps explain our current situation. So we cover 300 kilometres west to east, and through this it's medium, high and low rainfall zones. What we've seen within our southwest corner through the high rainfall zone is that clients have pulled back on their programs slightly for planting, a consequence of commentary and feedback from grain buyers, but also we've had a really great start to the season, so we've been able to switch across to some canola programs in those areas. Our northern guys and our eastern guys, medium to low rainfall zones, what we're seeing there is retained plantings, ability to store on farm. They think that the market will change or shift as the year progresses, so they're quite determined to stick with the normal program, put it in the shed and see what comes of it later in the year.
Thanks, Nat. Well, that's it for this video. If you'd like more details on prices and conditions in the 2021 season, be sure to download the report through the link in the description below.